Welcome to the IMM Friday Flash Talk, anchored by Govin Whittles.
The reason why that responsibility was taken away from the Hawks is not yet known.
With marketing enthusiast Tarasai Moffat.
To have a return on sales, you need to have posts that are going to be engaging.
Brought to you by the Institute of Marketing Management, South Africa. Good morning and welcome to the Institute of Marketing Management's IMM Friday Flash Talk. It's another installment of the platform where we hope to bring you insightful conversations about the latest trends in the world of marketing and some of the disruption that's taking place. We've tracked how marketers are changing the way that they do things, what kind of strategies they're introducing, and hopefully we've brought discussions to the table that are helping marketers make better decisions to not only manage the brands, but reach consumers. On this platform, we also hope that you'll engage with us through social media. Please use LinkedIn, Facebook, social media like Twitter, and be part of the discussion. Take the conversation further. We've had a range of different guests, and today we bring you a guest who's very insightful, someone with a breadth of experience across the world, working in tech marketing, to be specific. His name is Jonathan Williams, the CEO of Chat Inc., someone who's been in the industry for over 25 years. And of course, as usual, we have Tarasai Moffat. She's the MD of Gateway Synergy, our marketing enthusiast who's helping us shepherd the conversation along. Thank you so much for joining us on this discussion on this platform. It's the IMM Friday Flash Talk. And Jonathan, I'll hand it over straight to you. Just give us an idea of today's topic, which is chat commerce and whether it's being used effectively and finding its voice in South Africa. What do you think?
Thank you very much, Govin. I think, yes, chat commerce is certainly a very, very interesting phenomenon that's happening within both South Africa, but all across the developing world. And there's obviously a number of reasons for that, which we'll dive into. I think we only now starting to see the real seedlings of what chat commerce will become. And I think it's been trying to find its feet over the past couple of years. Having seen it from its start as far back as 2015, I've seen the development across a number of years in terms of chat commerce coming into its own. Some missed starts, some good starts, but I think we off to the races soon with chat commerce really starting to get embedded in society as a whole, and that's for a number of reasons.
All right, I see that chat commerce is described as kind of the intersection between messaging apps and shopping. That's something that we know a lot about in South Africa. It's certainly something that's taking off on the continent. Before we get into the discussion about the state of chat commerce on the continent, around the world, Tarasai, what do you think of today's topic and whether or not chat commerce is finding its voice among marketers in the Southern African context?
So I look at it from the past. And in the past, what happened was we had COVID. And with COVID, everyone was working from home. And so there were less and less call centers and clients couldn't address all the consumer issues. And so chatbots really rose during that time because there was now a need for consumers to get some form of contact with their clients without necessarily going through the call center. So then there was this rise and this peak. But post-COVID, it feels like there hasn't been enough technology invested. There hasn't been enough engagement invested in making sure that the chatbots work as efficiently as possible. So at this stage, it almost feels like most chatbots are at a point where they ask you the basic questions and then they hand you over to the client services person. You get a ticket and then you have to follow up with the ticket. Whereas a chatbot is ideally supposed to be able to address majority of the concerns or challenges or questions that...
I suppose you could pick it up by looking at the history of why WhatsApp targeted the developing markets.
Yes, I think SMS was quite expensive a couple of years. Well, it is still, you pay on an SMS bundle. And one of the reasons why things like WhatsApp and other social messaging apps has taken a foothold in the developing world is, one, because the cost of communication was quite expensive. Previously, I'm not sure if you can remember a time when You used to want to send an SMS at New Year's, and you'd wait maybe till the next morning for it to be delivered. So since messaging has been introduced, it's been a way more effective way of communicating. And coupled with the network effects of social messaging apps, i.e. inviting others to it, establishing WhatsApp groups, it's really taken a foothold because of that network effect as well. And so that in itself has helped the value spread to a number of users, because if we as a group of friends are on WhatsApp and one is outside of that using a different app, they're outside of the communication loop effectively, right? And so for the only way for them to be part of the conversation is to join WhatsApp. So that's what it's got going for it. And with the commercialization of WhatsApp since 2018, we've seen initial use cases like customer support and those kinds of things. Then we started seeing the introduction of bots, some very bad experiences, some good experiences, but I suppose with any new technology, there's a lot of experimentation at the start. And I've got a number of ideas on exactly why that is the case, right? But WhatsApp commerce has now taken foothold, and I think we're about to see some really amazing things, especially from a primary commerce perspective. We've seen in Brazil payments on WhatsApp being introduced. We've seen payments in India being introduced. And now with the introduction of PayShop in South Africa, which will be a form of banking interchange and payment interchange, it will make payments on WhatsApp possible. I'm not sure exactly the time horizon for that, but it certainly will make it possible in the medium to long term. And that will certainly put WhatsApp commerce or chat commerce on steroids within the South African region.
All right, Teresa, I'll bring you in here just to get your experience on whether you use chat commerce or if you made a payment on WhatsApp before. Jonathan, just tell me quickly, what platform exists for marketers to use to facilitate a payment on WhatsApp, or what platform, how would it be introduced?
At the moment, unfortunately, you still have to break out of WhatsApp. So how that journey goes is we give you either an OZO payment link within WhatsApp, or there's a separate breakout link to a credit card page or a payment page. So you still need to break out of the experience, which is not ideal because ideally you would want to keep people within the medium that they started their journey with you. So we're hoping that would change.
Teresa, I mean, the breakout experience is what I'm used to. Like, is that the safe bet for marketers and for the customer as well?
It is, especially if you see what small businesses, I think, are the ones that are primarily using this and have really jumped onto the wagon versus the bigger brands or the bigger corporates. Because with the smaller businesses, they actually have a little marketplace and you can order there, and then, but you're actually talking to a human, and then afterwards they send you a link for you to pay. You check out and you pay. And like you said, you have to go through an external payment portal to be able to release the payment. You send them proof of payment and your goods get sent. For small businesses, that is very ideal without having to go through all the red tapes of setting up shop and all of that. E-commerce and the chat in that regard has really helped small businesses to thrive.
Yeah, and Teresa, can I just add to that as well? I think one of the reasons why it hasn't been possible in WhatsApp is because your card data, you can't delete it, or the other person would still, or the business would still have your credit card details. So that makes the interface less ideal for those kinds of information exchange. Ideally, it would be the way WhatsApp payments work in other countries is that the same way like you link your card to Zapper, or to SnapScan, you would do it in a similar fashion through the settings in terms of WhatsApp, and then be able to use your card within the interface itself. And what I think is going to be really exciting is if we see the introduction of PayShop and companies get a payment, a PayShop ID, it will pretty much work like M-Pesa works within Kenya, where you would just pay to a PayShop ID within WhatsApp.
And then you accumulate those funds and spend them with the different shops. Kind of, okay. So some interesting experiences have happened. I mean, I just want to get back to the comparative analysis. A friend of mine was in the US the same time where I was in Asia, and I was paying with my phone with WeChat, and he told me that they were still asking for his credit card in the US and then taking it away and then processing the payment like that. So I guess what I'm asking is, we're kind of in the middle, aren't we? Because we're already tapping with our phones. So
Absolutely.
is the US lagging behind? And by extension, does that extend to the West?
I think there's a very real reason for that. The SMS works on iMessage and default messaging apps, so it works exactly like WhatsApp within those countries. So there's been no real need, and SMS is almost free within the US. The same with data is not as expensive as it is in the developing world, and therefore there's been real reason to switch to an app when, well, those kinds of mediums like SMS has been working. They don't experience SMS the way we do in terms of 160 characters necessarily. You're able to do much more because I can use my iMessage app on my iPhone and have a chat-like experience via SMS.
It's amazing how that's translated into chat commerce really taking off in other countries because of an ease. It's almost an unintended consequence. I want to get back to the marketing side. Tara side, like, are marketers increasing the prominence of chat commerce in the offering that they present to brands at the moment, or is it a case of brands demanding that chat commerce be part of what they're offering in terms of a marketing experience?
I think we're seeing brands relying more on it. So brands are doing the push, because I think from a creative or an agency perspective, or from a marketer's perspective, sometimes you don't understand the need. So if Jonathan can elaborate a little further on the need, why would we need to add this to our company offering? If clients are able to purchase goods in store, if they're able to check out on our website and pay for it on our website, if they can order, let's say, on Mr. D and be able to get their products with their cards in a secure payment portal, what would be the real need for chat commerce to be added to a product offering?
Sure, absolutely, Sarah. I think the primary reason is, if we look at the demographics of South Africa, it is still a very unequal society. And with that comes, the factors of digital exclusion, low expensive data, and so forth. And WhatsApp and chat is a very convenient channel for people to engage on. When we look at the majority of the use cases that we've had with major retailers in South Africa, where the majority of South Africans shop, we find that number one, messages, apps like social messaging and WhatsApp have got what I call just enough technology. So for somebody who's got a very low, it's not highly skilled on digital engagement, for them it's an app that they understand, it's an app that they use every day, and so it's a very natural experience. So it will not replace existing e-commerce on web and so forth, but it will complement it very nicely. And it will be very much dependent on the demographic that you're serving with your particular business. If you're serving low-income households and so forth, what we found in everything from document collections, so submitting your ID document, submitting a proof of income, and all of those kinds of things, those things are an absolute snap for customers. And we've seen, hundreds and thousands of messages being exchanged because it was just easier for people to engage. We've also digitized lots of existing paper-based processes, like an application for credit, and put that on WhatsApp. And it was significantly easier for people to engage that way and less costly. They didn't need to travel to store. They didn't need to go and take their documents. They didn't need a photocopier to scan it, to email, and to then send it in. And if we know the realities of South Africa, not everyone has an email address, but they probably have a WhatsApp number. And therefore, understanding the realities of the market that you serve is imperative. in order to know which kind of experiences to design for them. So I would say that it's a convenience factor. It would complement existing stores, existing e-commerce stores, and web properties nicely. And I think it's still fairly new. WhatsApp shopping has only really been taking a foothold over the past year within South Africa, and we've seen it with small business adopting it, and we'll slowly start seeing enterprises or large-scale businesses starting to experiment with that technology as well.
What you're describing is incredible. I mean, it seems like you're describing a world where WhatsApp shopping takes over online shopping. So just explain to us again how you envision, or when do you think people would be able to pay within WhatsApp, and then what that would do to chat commerce and to transacting for businesses in the Southern African context.
Perfect. Thanks, Govind. I think with the introduction of PayShop, I think we're probably looking at about a year off. You know, you'll start seeing lots of experimentation within that payment space within WhatsApp, but I think you'll start seeing the actual live use cases of that 6 months to probably a year out. What that will do is it will really make payments from a chat commerce perspective much more mass adopted. And the reason for that is as well that customers would now not need to break out of the chat experience, right? And so if we also know that within South Africa, a large part of society is on very low income. And so they'll buy a WhatsApp bundle, but they won't buy a data bundle. So they can transact in WhatsApp, but if they need to break out, well, they can't break out because they don't have the data. And so you lose that transaction. So by including payments within the WhatsApp interface itself, it's going to really allow that to take a foothold within South Africa, and really from a convenience perspective.
You know, what does that do for the informal economy then? Is a lot of people transacting cash?
Yes, I think we all know that it's still largely cash is king within the informal economy. And there's been a general distrust of apps and the data it uses within that economy. I've been part of some research studies in the past that actually indicated that people will very closely look at the data use on those particular apps before they would download them and so forth. And so what it would do for the informal economy, peer-to-peer payments within WhatsApp and those kinds of things, it would really facilitate a lot more of those cash-based payments to come into the formal economy and into the digital space.
Teresa, if you're a marketer listening to that, I mean, what we're talking about is something that's just a year out. It's solid gold for anyone who's in business trying to get tips about what might happen in the future and something they could do to kind of capitalize on it now. How do you receive news like that?
To be honest, that sounds fantastic. I can envision it. I can see how it would work. I'm just not sure how the checkout process would work. So they're still holding cash, and they can't make a payment for my product as a brand. Peer-to-peer, yes, but as a brand, how does that payment checkout work for me to receive it? Do they still need to align and go and deposit it at a ShopRite?
Yeah, so Teresa, they would still need some way of moving that cash into either a digital component. And there's been a number of initiatives, I'm not exactly sure of the name now, but where you can buy a voucher from a trader in order to transact online. So that could be possible. But in this case, you would just need your mobile number in order to transact. You wouldn't need a bank account even, right? You'd need some kind of digital wallet that you can deposit that money into, and then you can transact only with using your mobile number. But you would still need to get that cash into some kind of digital format, or into not necessarily the formal banking system, but into some sort of digital wallet.
Okay. I mean, I suppose that's inevitable. That would need to happen. What is happening at the moment is social media is taking off for brands, and they're finding a lot of their customers are landing on their pages through social media ads. What does chat commerce then do to the existing platforms on the brand's websites? So what happens to the existing payment platforms that are on the brand's websites once the world is innovated towards paying on social media? Does that render them like irrelevant?
No, I think it is, like, let me take you back a few years when social came into effect. You then had web commerce, you had social commerce or social media engagement and advertising. So it doesn't necessarily replace it, but it does augment it. Sometimes it does cannibalize some of that traffic over from a user perspective, but ultimately you would still have customers that remain on your web commerce, those that feel comfortable engaging via your website and so forth. And for those that want to migrate over to a chat commerce experience, they'll stay within that particular medium. So you would still need your existing payment providers and payment functionality within your cart, within your normal commerce web presence and so forth. You would just repurpose some of that for chat commerce and to expose some of that functionality within WhatsApp. But in our experience as well, that chat commerce will not, it is good for some things, but it's not good for everything. So you're not going to have an entire, I don't think so, but I'm willing to take bets on this, that you will not see an entire take-a-lot experience on WhatsApp for a number of years due to the mechanics of the way we search for information and search for products and add them to our cart. It would be much shorter kind of commerce engagement, like ordering. So for example, I know what I want to order already, and I just add those quickly to my basket, and then I check out. But I'm not, if I've got 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 products, that becomes less likely because the interface itself would not really allow for that at the moment.
All right, we've spent some time talking about what might happen, but I'd like to focus on what marketers are doing right now. Teresa, like what is the general approach towards chat commerce at the moment? Is it still limited to kind of having a person that you're chatting to in a small business side on your website, and then for the bigger brands, what I'm used to is the bots kind of picking up keywords, or is there a different approach to chat commerce?
The big brands fundamentally have chatbots, and I think chatbots create some form of they're exciting, but they're also annoying for some clients in terms of if they're not effective in providing the information that you need. If they're only very basic in terms of your user journey and in terms of addressing your issues, then they're almost irrelevant. It's almost like brands have invested a lot of money and technology into something that's not particularly relevant. But with companies like NetFlorist, I mean, Mother's Day, people could, that for a company like that, that's very easy. You check out, order flowers for your wife or your mother, check them out, pay for it via chat commerce, very easy. So for a brand like that, it's very easy to implement something like that, because their user journey experience from the get-go has always been based on that principle of easy customer service, easy convenience, easy for you to check out. But for a brand that has established itself in terms of having existing systems, existing procurements, different departments are not talking, to be able to then implement it takes a lot of technology and a lot of rethinking the processes that they have to do in-house, which makes it sometimes not user-friendly for them. But it's easy, I mean, for your prepaid to be able to buy electricity, to be able to, check your multi-choice balance, for those type of things is quite easy and it works effectively. But for anything complex, I'm not seeing the big take in, but I'm sure Jonathan has better statistics than me. This might just be from talking to peers and watching and monitoring different businesses.
Indeed, Teresa, and thanks for those examples as well. I think important to note here is that it's very business dependent. A chatbot will not be suitable for every business. And let me just quickly spend a minute on chatbots. Chatbots, the reason why we've seen a number of very bad experiences on chatbot, or chatbots that's not even very helpful, because there's been a fixation on the technology itself and not the experience, right? Chatbots needs to have a customer. So just like we in web design and all of those kinds of things, you shouldn't have too many clicks on your website. Your website shouldn't be too complicated for people to navigate. Otherwise, they just go somewhere else and they search for another competitor on Google. The same thing with chatbots. There's an element of conversation design that comes in where you actually design the conversations and the flow of conversations with customers so that they can have a more naturally engaging experience. The second I hear chatbot saying, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you were saying, already that for me is a terrible experience. If I get that the second time, I'm not coming back to that channel. And so you've got to design, you have to design these conversations, hence conversation design, to be more of a natural experience. Now, I think technologies like ChatGPT is going to make that engagement feel way more natural than it has been. Because traditionally, you needed to train every single thing of a chatbot in order to make it even relatively decent to engage with from a customer perspective. And so I would just like to stand still. The technology is fine, but the customer experience or the experience itself of the chatbot should go hand in hand. We help lots of companies on this chat commerce journey, looking at the business as a whole and looking at exactly what are they trying to achieve as a business, and then advising them accordingly. And lots of times we'll say, well, we don't think that you're ready yet from a chatbot engagement. Run the chatbot or run the engagement in a more natural agent fashion for a couple of months. Take the learnings from that before you then start introducing a chatbot from day one.
Jonathan, a lot of people in South Africa are quite frustrated by how they interact with chatbots, but you have a better sense of what the technology looks like across the world. Is it a case of it developing evenly, or is it quite different?
I think South Africa is a little bit different in the sense from other regions that I've seen. Other regions such as Europe and so forth have gone very much the conversational messaging route. So I ask the bot a question, it gives me an answer. I ask the bot a question, I give it an answer. South Africa, or in Africa, USSD is still a huge predominant part of how people engage with brands as well. And Nigeria is probably the biggest on the continent from a USSD perspective. So I think Kenya would be second and South Africa probably third from a USSD engagement, where people have become used to menu structures. And when we introduced bots initially back in 2018, it was important to peg WhatsApp chatbots against something that people were already familiar with. Because if it was too far off from their current experience, it inhibits adoption. So by providing those menus, it made it easier for people to migrate from USSD over into WhatsApp. And then as people started chatting more naturally with bots, so for example, they won't click menu item number 1 saying that I want to check my balance. They'll write out the entire query and then hopefully get a response. Well, over time, we started capturing those experiences of what people are actually asking for between menu items in order to give them a more conversational experience. But from a user experience, I'll pose the question, what is better for a user? Me saying that check your balance and it's clear that that's what the option is, or saying that you can ask me any question and the user has to think about what their search query needs to be in order to get useful information out of the platform. So I think from a prompt perspective, it's always important to provide prompts within a chatbot experience of what is possible with this chatbot, what information can it provide, and what can it not do in order to provide a more natural and useful experience to customers.
Yeah, I guess we are conditioned to menus. What do you think, Teresa?
Yeah, we are conditioned to menus. Menus, choose option 1, choose option 2, and yeah, that is the context that people are used to. I just want to ask about the data privacy when it comes to this, because that's quite a key component. If my phone gets stolen and all my e-commerce was on my WhatsApp chat, am I now at risk? Because from a theft point of view, how do we protect that information within the e-commerce chat once your phone has been stolen, for example?
Sure. So that is exactly why payments have not gone mainstream within WhatsApp, because of the fact that we have to put in our credit card data or debit card data within the interface, and then it is there for everyone to see. So that is why the number one reason why this has not happened yet within WhatsApp. And rightfully so. I mean, no one wants their credit card data to sit within WhatsApp itself. It must be encrypted. It must be all handled within the backend. But from the majority of other information, I think I know that you should never share information that is too sensitive within a chat experience, especially if you're living in a household where people are sharing their WhatsApp, and this does sometimes happen with families and so forth. So one should, just like normal online banking, one should take precautions. The same thing like in chat commerce, you should take precautions as well with your device. And I know there's new lock features coming within WhatsApp and all of those kinds of things. But the interface is getting more sophisticated, and hopefully the Meta guys and other social messaging app providers takes note of that as well.
Yeah, all right. I'd like to come to what Chat Inc. does. You mentioned it a little earlier, Jonathan, that you work with companies and you kind of advise them whether or not they're ready for chatbots. But if you could take a step back, what kind of questions are these companies asking you when it comes to introducing chat commerce? And what kind of returns are they able to get from introducing chat commerce?
Sure. So I think important to note, if we have to break chat commerce down a little bit into its component parts. There's the customer support part of chat commerce. There's the self-service component of chat commerce. And then there's the actual commerce part of chat commerce, right? And traditionally over the past 5 to 6 years, it started off with customer support, with agents sitting on a live chat platform and engaging with customers via WhatsApp. Then they took their most commonly asked questions in order to maximize their existing, so leaving the decision-making capabilities to humans and giving the repetitive questions over to bots. And then so those are, let's call them customer services bots and FAQ bots. Then we moved over to transactional bots, right? Where you can now apply for a loan via this channel. You can submit a digital application the same way like you would fill out a form in store, or you would do it on a website. There's many types of transactional use cases. It all depends what businesses is trying to achieve. And what there is now is the ability to broadcast WhatsApp messaging as well, which I think is probably more relevant for marketing folks. And I think marketing folks have not had such a big engagement with WhatsApp and customer support yet. But what we're going to see over the next few years with shopping and the ability to broadcast special offers to customers and so forth, it really opens up the channel for a lot more engagement from a marketing perspective, from a lead capture perspective, from a lead generation perspective, and then taking your online ordering and those kinds of things onto those channels. But coming back to the question about business. So like I said, we've worked with many different industries. And when I take retail, for example, we took existing manual paper-based processes and we transferred them over to WhatsApp because they wanted to make it easier for customers to submit certain documents to them because they weren't on email. And they saw this had a significant impact in terms of the impact on revenue because they weren't able to conclude some of these transactions. When we may introduce WhatsApp as a channel, it was way easier for a certain demographic of customers in order to now complete those transactions and not having to either go and find an email address or go into store or needing to go to an internet cafe in order to find an email address in order to send in a document. So we reduced a lot of the friction points for those businesses through the chat commerce engagements. But not every business is the same. It depends whether they have an agent count of 10 people that are servicing customers. They are now able with a chatbot to multiply by a factor of 10 the number of customers that they're able to serve versus traditional contact centers, right? Because that's what chatbots does. You don't need to increase your headcount. You just need to increase your self-service in a lot of scenarios. And then you have the businesses that want to now expose some of the existing transactional processes over things like WhatsApp. They can then do that as well. If it is, and a lot of the time it's tied to their revenue objectives. It's tied to, from a customer experience perspective, and them understanding that the demographic of customers that they serve is not, there's too many friction points in order to conclude certain transactions.
It's obviously the experience we have in South Africa. We use all of those different components of chat commerce, and I suppose that we're providing the data, but it comes back to an interesting question. This is all digital, right? And we've spoken about how traditional marketing platforms are still more dominant in the Southern African context. Terasai, is it inconceivable for a marketing firm to abandon a chat commerce offering for their clients? Or is it inconceivable for brands to reject adopting chat commerce into the way that they service their customers going forward?
Oh, that's very bold. I don't think you should abandon any form of opportunity to talk to your consumer, because in a world where there is so much information overload and so much competition, if you can be closest to your consumer, the better. So if you're able to be on their mobile device and they allow you according to the POPI Act, then you need to be communicating with them with that platform. And I mean, you look at certain companies like Mukuru that have had, or Diaspora Meds, that are literally signing up medical aid to their consumers via WhatsApp, or sending money across Africa and across African borders via WhatsApp. So it's not something that you can abandon, because there are those entry players into the market that are changing the game and making that experiential marketing so much better for them. So when they come and they compare it with your brand, and it's like, but that brand doesn't offer that, then it's almost like you lose your bearing and you lose your platform in terms of, can you adapt quickly to the changes that are happening within the landscape? So it's very important to have it, but how you have it, you'd need to then partner with your chat inks to ensure that it's consumer friendly and that you're taking into cognizance the user journey. So don't just have it for the sake of having it, or if you're going to have it, then at least have someone 24/7 dedicated to responding. If you can't do it properly, at least make sure that there's that consumer engagement. I've had other people saying they would rather hear someone say to them, sorry, our system is offline, than just get a ticket number and be told that they'll come back to you. So if you are actively engaging with your consumer, then by all means.
I mean, now that we know it, you have to kind of incorporate it. I suppose, Jonathan, the question is, what is the starter kit that a marketer can offer a business that's currently completely analog, that doesn't even have WhatsApp business to respond to some of the queries, but is looking to break into or to use the facilities available that chat commerce offers? So for a completely analog business, a marketer approaches them. What do you think are the first things that they can offer them, or the kind of advice they could give?
Yeah, I think there's a level of maturity of the business that's quite important. And as Teresa said as well, if you don't do it badly, just put the effort in. It's a very valuable channel of engagement with your customers. And so make sure that you speak to the professionals, get a proper implementation. But why in that particular use case, what you would do is they probably have WhatsApp in some shape or form. So they probably have still a mobile device somewhere. And those are typically the ones where they now want to formalize their WhatsApp communication, right? So they've seen there's too many messages to handle for them. They're losing track of exactly which request came in from which customers. And in that is the exact point where you need to start formalizing your WhatsApp communication, bringing in a platform for your agents to engage where they can manage all of these chats and can provide that customer experience. And we definitely see that now outgrown just WhatsApp on the phone. And they now need a proper business system in order to start engaging with customers. Then from there, as they learn how this channel of engagement works and so forth, they can now start saying, okay, how do we get the best out of this platform? We see all of our agents handling all of these manual queries. People ask the same question 100 times a day. Well, those are the perfect candidates to move over to a self-service kind of functionality, just making sure that the experience is designed correctly. And as they go through their chat commerce maturity, as it were, they will then start moving, if they have transactional requirements, if they've got marketing requirements, they can then start broadcasting bulk messages to their existing base, obviously in line with POPI and so forth, and making sure that you have the consent, but sending high value messaging to those particular customers. So to recap, it is a bit of a journey that you go on. You do not start off with the most advanced chatbot if you're just starting to dip your toes into the chat commerce field.
Mm-hmm. Speaking about a journey, another journey that companies have gone on is hiring people for call centers. That's been going on for years here in South Africa, or everywhere on the African continent. Tarasai, what kind of investment have brands made into call centers, or how much of a factor have call centers been when considering the offering for marketers?
I think call centers is probably the most traditional traditional platform, and it's still going to be there, and it's still going to remain there because people need human interaction. We are humans at the end of the day, and I need to be able to speak to someone at some point. So I think what they've done is they've tried to improve the processes so that you don't hold for a long period of time. So they've worked on the efficiencies to make sure you're not holding. They've made the efficiencies to make sure that you're not transferred from department to department and you're holding and holding. So I think they've tried to improve the efficiencies, but I don't think you're going to see call centers going away anytime soon in any African context.
The reason I ask is because I noted that while an outcome of a study of chat commerce at Discovery Health reported less frequent queries to the call centers after the introduction of various chat commerce capabilities. Jonathan, what does that do? Because, I mean, we don't expect them to go away, but does it diminish the size of your call center once you have chat commerce facilities that are able to do some of the work for you?
Sure. So I think the dynamics here of chat commerce, if I have 10 call center agents or 100 call center agents, they can only handle one call at a time because they're engaging with that particular customer at that particular point in time. So if you have an average call time of, say, 2 minutes to 5 minutes, depending on what the query is, there's only a finite number of calls that 100 agents can actually handle. But with chat commerce, it's one agent is able to handle multiple chats concurrently, just for the way the conversation happens, because the customer on the other end, they climb into a taxi, so they start messaging into the contact center, for example. Then they get to work, and by the time the agent has messaged them, they don't hear back from them because they'll get back to the message perhaps a little bit later. So unlike contact center or voice-based contact center, where there's a very definite time that the call starts and ends, with chat, that chat can take up to multiple hours because we'll wait for the customer to re-engage when they are in a convenient place or have time to respond. And what that then means is that that same agent can then move on to other chats at the same time as well. So they have increased capacity from an overall chat commerce perspective. And looking at the functionality of these platforms, they're able to easily handle multiple consecutive chats. And that's just if we look at the dynamics of chat commerce as well. If somebody calls you on a voice call, you have to leave everything that you're doing now in order to engage with that call. You cannot basically do anything else. But with a WhatsApp message or a chat message, well, you can look at the message. You don't have to engage immediately. So it is the way the communication mechanism work is slightly different to what traditional voice calls work. But I agree with Teresai that voice-based contact centers will always have their place. The technology might change a little bit, but there will always be voice-based contact centers. You will only see a more effective and efficient way of technologies being introduced in order that they can serve their customers better, more conveniently. But those contact centers, I don't think is going anywhere either.
I think one thing chat commerce might actually help with is to save businesses on the return policies, because a lot of products get returned to organizations because the person didn't understand or they didn't have time to ask the questions, etc. Whereas with the engagement that comes from being on a chat, it's easier to save on return policies, because I think that's a lot of what businesses and marketers are struggling with, where the sales increase, but the returns at the warehouses are storing up and storing up.
One of the things I do often is go on YouTube to see how to install things or how to use the product that I've just bought. Do you think we'll get to a point where like brands are offering that kind of assistance through chat? And then
absolutely,
what kind of impact would that have on the relationship with the brand?
Well, let me say this, right? And I, to a certain degree, I'm in the same camp as Teresai, where I think the pace of innovation in the chatbot space has stagnated a bit. We're starting to see the same kind of experiences. But when we look at chat, it is a rich medium. You don't only need to use text. You can use video in order to be more helpful to your customers. Obviously, there's a data usage component to it, but there's images, there's data, there's voice. Brands should be including all of those kinds of media. If it's not too data rich for and consuming too much data for their customers, they should ideally use all of those kinds of things in order to engage with customers, to provide a really mind-blowing experience to customers from a chatbot experience. Chatbots are still way too text-based. They could be much more interactive. We see now that you can now click on buttons. You don't need to type within WhatsApp so much anymore when it comes to chatbots. So there's more interactivity, but now I've seen very few that actually includes video, images, and all of those kinds of things, and even voice in order to deliver an important message to a consumer.
Tell you what, the day that I can video call someone to help me set up what I've bought, I would have incredible loyalty towards that brand, because I'm just waiting for that to happen. Hopefully it'll happen soon. Teresai, I mean, is that part of the strategy at the moment? I don't know if I know any brands that are communicating with their clients on the product experience while they're using it, except for problems, I suppose. And even with problems, do other chat experiences beyond complaining about the product and wanting to return it, or to actually help you understand it?
I'm actually picking up a huge marketing opportunity where we can create content for these type of platforms as gateway synergy. So I haven't seen it, but I think it's something that we're going to take into stride now that we know there's an opportunity for that.
Absolutely. Gavin, can I just add to your question, actually? We actually are now, you know how everyone has questions with their internet service provider. How do I reset this device? How do I reset this router? So we're busy actually with those kinds of video content for a very well-known local ISP in order to provide that kind of self-service and interactivity to their customers.
Yeah, you're hoping to replace all the YouTube videos that we watch, and I'll tell you, some of those videos have 10 views, which means we all have the same problem, trying to reset things or build doll houses that we've bought for our children. We're wrapping up the conversation. Usually we try to do it by having a look back, firstly at how chat commerce ranks within the marketing mix. Jonathan, I'll start with you. You tell us how you think it should rank, and what kind of engagements your company has been receiving in terms of people wanting to pick up more chat commerce facilities.
Thanks. I think it's messaging or chat commerce, like WeChat in China, has become infrastructure. And in fact, we should think of it as infrastructure, not just an app. It's become the infrastructure on which most of the Chinese economy runs. And they've actually surpassed existing web commerce and those kinds of things to jump directly onto mobile because they were very mobile. And because Africa is very mobile as well, we're starting to see the same kind of adoption happening here. So it's not really that surprising that it's happening. It's because we are more mobile than our Western counterparts. In requests for bots, an increase in wanting to do way more transactional kind of use cases on these channels, so moving into true chat commerce. We're seeing quite a bit in terms of broadcast messaging, so as a replacement for existing SMS kind of campaigns. Although it's slightly different because you can obviously have rich media, you can create much more engaging kind of marketing campaigns with WhatsApp and with these kinds of channels once you have the opt-ins. And then we're seeing the early seedlings of adoption of shopping, ordering within WhatsApp using the new functionality that's now available from a shopping experience. That's
what you can do, but what are brands doing, Tarasai, and how does it rank in terms of the brands that you're interacting with and the other marketers in terms of their thinking?
I think this conversation has been very insightful and it's shed a lot of light. And I hope all the marketers that are watching this IMM talk are going to be able to take the insights and the nuggets that Jonathan has provided, and we're going to start implementing them more and more within our marketing strategies and marketing mixes, because there is a clear gap and there is a clear opportunity, and we need to harness it to the fullness of its capabilities.
All right, so now it's time for the takeaways. Teresa, I'd like to start with you. Look, there's a lot that was said, right? And I think that I have my own takeaways. Maybe I should start there. And I'm really looking forward to WhatsApp commerce taking over in a big way in South Africa. And I think it is unavoidable. My family's already doing everything on WhatsApp and Facebook Marketplace. It's only a matter of time before they abandon going to traditional pages completely and start just shopping like that. But I do think that they still prefer in-store. So I'll be on the lookout for that. And I might have a little bit more sympathy for the chatbots that I engage with online, now that I know that they're still being developed, and I'll kind of wait for ChatGPT to do the heavy lifting before I become too critical. Teresa, what do you think are the main takeaways from this conversation?
The main takeaways I find are that it needs to be systematic in your approach. You need to have a consultative process with companies like Chat Inc. that are going to help you understand the market, understand your why behind what you're doing, understand your business needs and where you are and if it's going to apply to you. And then we need to be more open-minded about it and implementing it within our strategies. And also that, consumers want to engage with us to some extent. So let's try and make it as friendly, consumer journey friendly as let's try and make it as friendly as possible within the consumer journey.
Thanks, Jonathan. You'll have the last word on this, and keep in mind we're talking to senior marketing managers here, some graduates, people that are looking to introduce new strategies into the way that they approach brands, but also people that are making sure not to be left behind in adopting what's changing in the world. What do you think are the main takeaways to consider here?
Govind, I think there's still a huge education component in the market. Although we've all seen chat commerce in some shape or form, I think I can certainly see there's a lot of education that still needs to happen in the market. And a lot of the time, unfortunately, us as chat commerce companies, we take for granted that we've seen so many of these use cases, and we forget that we need to bring the industry along still, and do more of these kinds of education drives in terms of how do you step into this new world of chat commerce. It is quite daunting. Do you just set up a WhatsApp channel, buy a phone from Pick and Pay or Pep stores, and there you go? Or is there more to this thing that is WhatsApp? Is there actually a strategy that we can formulate? And I think certainly I'm happy to join forces with TerraSci in order to have such an education drive as well. I think for marketers, there's going to be a massive opportunity over the coming short to long term. I think it's going to be quite fascinating watching the use cases, watching the experimentation within this space. And unfortunately, the only thing that I've got to warn against is that WhatsApp is very different to SMS. So one's got to be very mindful of how you communicate with customers. Because unlike SMS, where we just have to receive this message and we can't really do much about it, with social messaging apps, the consumer has the power. The consumer can block you. The consumer can choose not to engage with you. Channels from the late 90s through the early 2000s and so forth were very much businesses being in charge of, we're going to send out this communication and, well, you just have to like it. But with WhatsApp and WhatsApp commerce, the customer is definitely in charge in terms of the types of communication that they want to receive. And so the types of conversations you have over chat commerce is very different to the kinds of conversations that you have across other mediums.
Thank you. Jonathan Williams, CEO of Chat Inc. and TerraSci Moffat, the MD of Gateway Synergy. That is an incredible notion, the concept of the consumer possibly blocking the brand on WhatsApp. And I think it is a reality check for most marketers who realize that engaging on chat platforms is the future, and transacting on chat platforms is probably going to be here much sooner than we think. That's it for this installment of the Institute of Marketing Management's IMM Friday Flash Talks. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope there have been a few golden nuggets that you could pick up and a few strategies that you're going to implement as you move forward on your marketing journey, as you interact with brands. Do interact with us on social media, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, even on TikTok. And sometimes we hope to see you reposting some of these conversations and taking them a bit further. Do join us for the next installment, where we'll be continuing insightful discussions on the latest trends in the world of marketing. From myself, Govind Whittles, your host, Jonathan Williams, and TerraSci Moffat, thank you once again for joining us on the IMM Friday Flash Talk.